It's time for a Big Blue Kickoff Live.
Nobody can ever tell you that you couldn't do it, because you did.
On Giants.com.
You know what I saw? New York Giant pride.
And the Giants mobile app.
17-14 is the final. One touchdown, we are world champions. Believe it, and it will happen.
Part of the Giants Podcast Network.
Let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. Have some fun.
Hi, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. It's a miracle I got that right. This is my third podcast today, and I have done 3 different sponsors, and I actually got that one right. That's a miracle. John Schmeelk, Michael,
there you go. You spoke too soon.
I stopped myself. John Schmeelk, Matthew Citak with you, taking your calls at 201-939-45. That's what I get for patting myself on the back
prematurely.
prematurely.
Couldn't have come a better time.
No, it could not have.
Immediately.
Absolutely not. Look, we are going to take a lot of your calls today, folks. I'm sure you guys still want to talk about the Giants' decision to go with Tommy DeVito as the starting quarterback. We talked about it on Big Blue Kickoff Live yesterday with Paul and I. Want to give Michael here a chance. I did that on purpose. A chance to talk about it today. Matt, just kind of give me your reaction, give me your take before we start getting to the fans' calls here.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think anyone here is too surprised.
No, we talked about it last week.
Yeah, we spoke about it last week. The possibility, obviously, we were speaking hypotheticals last week, but the writing seemed to be on the wall based on what Coach Dable said after the game in Munich and just how the first 10 games of the season went. So, yeah, not surprised. I guess the fact that it was the keys to the offense had been given, at least for this week, to Tommy DeVito over Drew Lock. I guess that was a little bit of a surprise,
sure.
But I was not too surprised about that. I mean, when Drew Lock was signed back in March, and I know a lot of people on Twitter have been, kind of freaking out a little bit about the fact that the Giants signed Drew Lock.
You have some Wilson in you, the way you like to monitor Twitter, what everybody's saying. You have a little bit of Wilson.
I'm a Twitter guy.
I
live on Twitter, so I see what everyone says. But a lot of people were complaining, like, oh, it's a waste of money. Why'd you sign Drew Lock? Well, they signed Drew Lock back in March, and we spoke about this last week too, well before anyone had any idea whether or not Daniel Jones was going to get cleared for not even the start of training camp, if he would be ready for the start of the regular season. We had no idea. So I don't fault the front office or anyone at all for bringing in Drew Lock. It was the responsible thing to do. But given how the season has gone so far, 10 games in, you're 2-8, facing the final 7 games of the season, I'm fully on board and agree with the decision to give Tommy DeVito a chance, because Tommy DeVito, this is only his second year. He showed a little bit last year as an undrafted rookie free agent, led the Giants to a 3-3 record and 6 starts. Who knows? Maybe in these last 7 games, regardless of how, the win-loss looks in the last 7 games, maybe he shows enough where you want to bring him back as your legitimate, backup quarterback, or depending on what the quarterback situation is in the offseason, have him compete to be the starting quarterback for for week 1, depending on if there's a rookie brought in, bridge quarterback, whatever. That obviously there's a lot to figure out over the next however many months into the offseason, but I'm fully on board with giving him a chance to see what he can do, see if he has grown from last season, because while he did lead the Giants to 3 victories last season, it's not like, he was playing perfect ball out there.
Yeah, and look,
he did struggle at times with certain different things, so I'm fully on board with giving him a chance to show what he can do.
Yeah, I'll just add to one thing you said, because I think you make a good point. And it's less to do with me about, and this is a big part of it too, not knowing where Daniel Jones was health-wise. Back in March, you also didn't know how much progress Tommy DeVito was going to make from his rookie year to his second year. Going off what he did last year, and I said this year on the show, we weren't talking about Tommy DeVito as a backup. We were talking about Tommy DeVito, can you keep him as your third quarterback on the active roster? Could you maybe try to stick him onto the practice squad? That was the conversation last offseason, okay? Not Tommy DeVito is your backup, right? That's not where any of us were last year. But you're making that decision to bring in a Drew Lock in March before the players are even back in the building yet.
Yep.
So all that progress in the offseason that Brian Dable talked about Tommy DeVito making, you go back to my interview with Tommy on the Giants Huddle podcast when I did all 3 quarterbacks together over the summer. He talks about how much better he thinks he is, how much more comfortable he is, how much easier everything has come being in his second year. We didn't know that Tommy DeVito could have shown up this year and looked like the same guy he did in the last year, and maybe there wasn't any progress. You don't know how that works from year to year. You know, improvement is not linear in the National Football League. So I think Tommy DeVito probably showed up and was also better than what he was at the end of last year and better than what they thought he was going to be, which probably has something to do with this decision too.
Yeah, for sure. And where was I going to go with this?
I don't know. I can go to the calls if you want.
No. Okay. So, granted, we have not been out at practice since training camp.
Right.
So it's been over, almost 3 months now since we really got to watch a full Giants practice. But from the little bit that we did see, going back to the spring workouts in May, OTAs, and then, mini camp, training camp up until he got injured and I believe was the first preseason game. It's not like when Drew Lock was out there, he was like blowing Tommy DeVito out of the water.
Oh, I'll flat out say DeVito was better than he was in the spring.
Exactly.
In the spring, DeVito was better. Once Lock got used to the system, I think it kind of evened out a little bit.
It evened out, exactly. So if those two guys, let's just say, hypothetically, those two guys have shown you about the same throughout practice since the season started, who do you have more to gain from putting in at the quarterback for the last 7 games? Drew Lock, who's on a 1-year deal, and I mean,
right.
Maybe he's brought back, but who knows? Or Tommy DeVito, a second-year undrafted rookie quarterback who has shown you a little bit of juice when he has been out there last year, and can be brought back next year at an affordable rate because I believe he's an exclusive right free agent. So I'm not sure exactly. You would know better how exactly that works, but
you can bring him back if you want him. That's basically the deal.
It would be for minimal cost.
Correct.
So if he can even show you enough in these last 7 games to be like, this guy can either, be a bridge quarterback for a rookie or compete to be the starter, and he can do that at a minimal cost, there's obviously more to gain there than putting Drew Lock in, who is going to once again enter free agency in the offseason and probably sign a similar contract to what he got this year from the Giants, whether it's with the Giants or another team.
And I think Paul actually made a really good point on yesterday's show. I think Tommy DeVito's mobility has a factor in this too, where you can leave a lot of the same stuff in you did with Daniel. DeVito's not as big or as physical as Daniel is, but he can run, he's fast, he can mobile a little bit. So I think you can leave a lot of that stuff in terms of how the offense is structured, which maybe gives you a little bit more freedom too.
And the only other thing I just want to touch on from this, and again, this is just what I have seen a lot of people complain about on Twitter, that, obviously there's at least a portion of our fan base that does not want the Giants to win many more games or any in order to help the draft position. And
we've been here before.
And I've seen fans, kind of get upset saying Tommy is going to once again ruin the Giants draft hopes.
You can't
by
lose
winning
on
some
purpose.
Games. Only thing I will say to that, and again, we have not seen him really out there. I mean, we saw him some in the preseason, but we haven't seen him in a regular season game now in almost a full calendar year. But while he did lead the Giants to 3 victories last year, and the Commanders game last year in particular, he was great. It's not his overall numbers in those 6 starts and his 9 games total. It's not like they were game-changing numbers.
No, he averaged well under 200 yards a game.
Yeah,
well under.
Seth Walder of ESPN Analytics put out a tweet, I think this morning, saying he had a QBR of 24 and a sack rate of over 15%, both of which were among the worst, if not the worst. So to those fans out there that, are rooting for losses and are worried about Tommy ruining that, again, he has grown likely since last year. Not that we've seen, but it most likely has happened just going from year 1 to year 2. But chances are putting Tommy out there isn't going to, spark a 7-game winning streak to close the season.
And
you
fans,
never know.
if that
would happen, that would actually be great. I think we would all love a 7-game winning streak and Tommy showing that he can be, the future quarterback. That'd be a good thing.
The fans that want the Giants to lose are going to want the Giants to lose. The Giants are going to try to win. Brian Daboll's do everything he can to win.
As they should.
They're not going to self-sabotage themselves. That's not how any team in the NFL functions.
No.
That's it. So I'll leave it at that. I'm not going to get into that argument because it's nonsensical. It's a fan argument that doesn't apply to reality inside of a football building. I understand your point of view and why you would want to root for that. I'm not telling you that anything about it. I'm just telling you, practical application to a football team, it's non-functional. It's a non-functional idea.
Everyone here is still very much trying to win football games.
Correct, and that's not going to change. All right, let's go to the phones at 201-939-4513. James is in Greece. James, what's going on, man?
What's going on, guys? What's up, John? What's up, Matt?
Hey,
What are you doing in
calling
Greece,
us
James?
from Greece. I'm jealous.
Yeah, I'm working. So I'm a ship fitter. We work on submarines or whatever.
Nice. Are you in? So are you in you're in Athens, or are you in a different port? Where are you at? Or is that top secret?
Is where, yeah, kind of. But
Okay, so don't say it then. I don't want to get you. I don't want to get you court-martialed, James, or something like that, man. I don't want.
Yeah. No, that's all good. I ain't gonna tell you where which boat is located where.
No, please don't.
All this stuff is on Facebook, but I'm gonna move on from all that. But yeah, Greece is great here. It's 7:30 at night.
What is that like?
I had
What is
to
that like?
put the
Is
world
it like 75 degrees there? 80 degrees? Is it like springy, summery?
No, it's actually kind of cold. About 6, but it's not like it's like 60, 65.
Oh, that's not bad.
Kind of like beach cold, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
not like,
I got
in
you.
Georgia where it's warm and but yeah, it's nice out here. The food is great. Probably get some good cutlets out here too. You know what I mean? With the olive oil. I'm sure Paul would appreciate.
Nah, James. Paul's only interested in the peninsula to your west. He's not interested in your peninsula. He's only interested in the one to your west. That's it.
That's what's up. I mean, news is news, good or bad. You kind of seen the writing on the wall. I agree with everything I was saying because, like I said, as I've been calling in, and I know when I called in during the summertime, I was saying we're going to need a camp body quarterback no matter what, because we don't know if Jones is even going to be able to run practice. So bringing in Locke was pretty much a necessity just to be able to practice functionally during training camp and all that stuff. So like Matt, I've been taking to Twitter just to see what's going on in the States and this and that, and everybody's, why bring in Drew Locke for $5 million just to skip him? Like, it's not our money. We needed somebody for camp. That's why he was there. He's still the backup quarterback. We're not going back to Jones. And I've seen all the reports where, financially, if Drew Locke plays so many plays and does so many things that you owe him so much money. And, I mean, all that's all well and good.
I honestly think that part of it's overrated, to be honest with you, James. That is not a significant amount of money in terms of the number of games left in the season for him to hit some of those. Like, to me, that to me is not the driving force here at all, or at least in my opinion.
Not only that, but if you look at what the reported details of those incentives are, there's 7 games left. It is highly unlikely
Correct. That's what I'm
he's going to be
saying.
able to hit them regardless.
Yeah,
That's what I was trying to say.
15 touchdowns is one of the numbers he has to hit.
I think one was 40% of the snaps, which there's 7 games left.
Yeah.
I don't even know if it's possible for him to reach 40% of the snaps. So, yeah, would
that be just 40%? Well, I mean, I guess it wouldn't be 40% of just the games he plays in, because obviously he's going to take 100% of the snaps he plays in.
Yeah, I would assume that would mean snaps percentage of the season. So yeah, those incentives I really don't think have any bearing on this decision.
Yeah, I mean, I'm I think I called y'all last week, and any given Sunday and all that, but realistically too, you got to look at the schedule, and no matter if it was Locke or DeVito, like we said during training camp, they kind of look neck and neck. I mean, neither guy is going to. Hopefully, they do. But I doubt that they will light it up in any significant manner. But like I said, let's beat the Cowboys on Thanksgiving, which I'll still be out here in Greece for Thanksgiving.
All right, James.
But we can beat the Cowboys on Thanksgiving. It'll be a great season.
All right, appreciate the call, man.
Thank you, James.
Be safe out there. Thank you for the work you're doing. I'm sure it's not easy work and all the travel. When you want to know where your taxes are going, it's for long-distance calls to Big Blue Kickoff Live on Tuesday afternoon. Let's do it. A better use of your tax dollars I might not know, to be honest with you. And by the way, I know people like to do that's a win, that's a loss, with the schedule and everything. Did anyone think the Giants were beating the Packers last year? Did anyone think the Giants would play the Buffalo Bills to a final play of the game, like for the goal line with a chance to score? Did anyone think they would win in Seattle this year, just to look at the games this year?
I mean, even that Commanders game last year that I was talking about, Tommy DeVito's best game, I know we don't, dive into stuff like this, but the Giants were like double-digit underdogs going into that game.
Were they really? I forgot.
They were like
I didn't remember
10-point underdogs, and they won by double digits.
So that's
you
what
really
I'm saying.
Never know.
So guys, I watched the Cowboys last night. They stink. They're a bad football team right now.
Say what you want about Dak Prescott. He is a lot better than Cooper Rush.
Yeah. Well, I think people
Obviously.
realize once they lose something, they realize what they lost in it. And it's actually funny. I just saw it pop up in my feed just now. When they were criticizing Jerry Jones last week for the sun coming into the end zone of the stadium, he goes, "Well, what am I going to do? Just tear the stadium down?" And then before the game this week, you got pieces of metal falling from the top of the stadium. Whoa, little weird. But look, the Bucs have a bunch of injuries. They've played nothing but close games this year. The Cowboys have been terrible. The Saints have been up and down, left and right. You don't know what Saints team is showing up every week. They traded Lattimore. Who knows if Derek Carr is going to be playing in that game? Are they going to go youth at that point? Are they playing the vet? Nobody knows. Did you see the Falcons game this past week against the Broncos? They got obliterated in that game. And then the Colts are up and down. Who knows what Anthony Richardson is going to show up in that game? And who knows if the Eagles are going to be playing for anything? We could be seeing Kenny Pickett at quarterback in the final week.
Yep.
So people that just say, "Oh, maybe 1 or 2 wins the rest of the way," guys, the Giants have been 1,000,000 one-score games this year. All right, they've been in only 2 games that really were not technically 3 because the Bengal game ended up being a 10-point loss or whatever. But that was a one-score game for the entire fourth quarter.
Yes.
So they've been in close games all year long. If you don't think you're going to get some luck at some point and a couple of those games are going to turn the other way in the final 7 games, you're wrong. It's going to happen. I'll go through the turnover stuff with you in a second, and that's going to be one of the reasons 1 or 2 of these games are going to turn. So it's not going to be as easy as you think to just, for the fans that want this to happen, to cruise to 2-15 and be done with it. Ain't how the NFL schedule works, and that's not how the NFL season works. So you're not going to lose close games all year. Eventually, it's going to turn. It did. Even in 2022, right? They started the season so hot, winning all those close games. Well, they lost some of those close games later in the year then. It's just the way it goes. 201-939-4513. Jim in Jersey, he's up next. Hey, Jim.
Hey, John. Hey, Matt.
Hey, what's going on?
What's up?
How you doing? I just want to start with 2 very quick Jones DeVito points and then kind of a broader thing, if that's
Sure.
okay, about kind of where we go with quarterback.
Yep.
So on Jones, I would just say that, I got to be one of the fans who, at least I hope there's some others out there that, at least if nothing else, I doubt this guy's ever listened to this show, but that somebody's on the record saying this guy laid it out there. 3 different regimes, all of it. For me, at least, if I wanted to show my son how to perform as a person in a high stress, difficult situation, what Daniel Jones did over the last 6 years, right to the end. I mean, I can't even imagine, at least in terms of how he handled the situation. You tell me the quarterback who might have handled it could cause less dissension, more harm to the franchise. I don't know who what you think of one.
Yeah, and
so
Jim, by the way,
I
not
hope
just handling it from
Yeah,
like
go
a
ahead.
mental standpoint. I apologize for interrupting.
No, please.
This is a guy that we were begging to slide. Like, he's trying to run over linebackers.
Right. I mean,
like he
John,
like the
you heard
physical
what
he
Chris
played with. It was
Collinsworth
crazy.
said. Right, like John, you heard what Chris Collinsworth said. He said, "I can't believe this guy is running into the line." He was saying in the Thursday night football game. So look, I just want to leave it there. Like, I hope for the best for him. Like
Nah,
a Sam
great
Darnold
point, Jim.
match with the Chargers.
We agree.
Or a nice quiet life as the bridge quarterback. He made $80 million. He's a handsome guy. I said to somebody, you guys probably don't remember the movie Superman in 1978 with Chris.
Oh, I've watched
But
that
it
movie
felt
many
like
times,
Daniel
Jim. I
Jones.
loved
He
Superman.
was okay. Well, I always think with Daniel Jones, like, it summed up like his whole Giants time. There's this scene in that movie where Superman gets kryptonite around his neck and he's like choking. He's going to die. Lex Luthor's sending 2 different nuclear missiles in different directions. and one of his assistants says, I'll save you, Superman. I'll get the kryptonite off, but you have to save my mother in New Jersey and not Lois Lane in Los Angeles first. And that's kind of how Daniel Jones was. It seemed like for the whole 6 years. He's like this big, tall guy trying to save this impossible situation, but whatever. Tommy DeVito. What I'd say about Tommy is obviously good dude. If you wanted juice and intangibles, he's got it. I mean, think of the Green Bay game. Saquon drops the ball. They asked him afterwards. I was just like, "Hey man, let's just go win the football game." You're like, "Holy crap!" Didn't you have to leave Syracuse to go to Illinois for a year? So he's got some juice. He's got maturity.
Yeah.
My word for DeVito in games coming forward is he also had Thomas and he had Saquon. Now that concerns me.
Great point.
Because he obviously, that worries me. Not because I don't think he's a good player, but and it's not to say that it's clear he does, but he is not the game planning threat that Saquon was. That lets any quarterback in a tough situation have some, group. So that worries me quite a bit.
The offensive line is better as a whole, though. Even though they're missing Andrew, Jim, the offensive line is better as a whole.
Well, I think against Carolina, that setup, Evan Neal looked better against Carolina. How he'll look against other teams, we'll see. I hope so. I mean,
good question. That's fair.
Anybody who's rooting against your own drafted player, high drafted players, is foolish. I kind of riffed a couple of weeks ago about, Kayvon is a good player, but he wants to be governor of California, so I didn't like that versus an LT. But I want, if Neal, I don't want Neal to be Art Flowers. I want him to succeed. So let's hope. But with DeVito, that's, you just wonder how things will go, because those were two pretty big keys in his success. And also the other thing too is there's a little bit of tape on him also, so we'll see.
Okay, but, and now what's your overall finding a quarterback point,
my
Jim?
overall arching point, I really wanted to talk to you about this is, I love your draft analysis. I over the years, terrific analysis. In fact, it's really in the off season. It's really, I love it. It's just really well done.
Thank you, Jim.
So here's my question.
You can talk as long as you want now.
No, seriously, John. I mean, I'll tell you something. You had a guy on last year whose name escapes me, who was in business, who became an analyst of NFL draft talent. And I went back and looked at this guy's website, and he laid out how Daniel Jones, this was from 2019, was very similar to two players, Case Keenum and also who was the quarterback who had so much success, Nick Foles with the Eagles. Both those guys had their best year at Shermer. So what I'm saying is that's some good content there. When you bring a guy like that on, that's good stuff.
Do you remember who it was? I'm honestly trying to remember, Jim, what guest specifically you're referring to. I'm trying to remember.
I can't remember his name. He was in the private sector, and he got into draft analysis.
All right, I'll find it.
Yeah, but it was during this past off season.
Okay.
So go back and see. But if you go to his website, I'm like, damn, that was interesting. Wow, Daniel Jones was in line with two of the quarterbacks who had their best seasons with Shermer. They were basically one read RPO quarterback.
Now let's get to finding the Giants' next quarterback.
I know guys are dying to screen. Look, my overarching concern is really this. I am worried because clearly it's quarterback or bust for Shane and Dable to survive, which is a shame in my mind because I've been on here and advised that I don't think this class is a good one. But I'm just going to ask you, as somebody who does so much work in the draft, and you've got to keep peace in the building, I'm going to ask you to wreck these guys. But I wonder if both you and Matt have to consider, and I know this, I don't believe we've built a team that you can slot a good quarterback, a young quarterback into, and they're coming into a situation that you'd say, damn, that's a good one. This isn't that kind of a situation. And they've had 3 years. Joe's had 3 years to build a team like this. But I don't want to get into the particulars. That's one problem I'm worried about this going forward. The second thing I'm a little worried about is just generally the handling of the situation with the quarterbacks. And what I mean simply is this. I liked Tyrod Taylor as a backup. There's a lot of back and forth. Who knows what's true, but a lot of folks think that one of the reasons Tyrod wasn't was because he felt DeVito was played over him longer than that was appropriate. He kind of insulted him. He wanted to stay in New York. He ended up signing with the Jets. The money difference, I think you can say, 7 versus 5 or something. But that wasn't handled up. I know reasons for why we're, Tommy gives the spark and stuff. But one would think that Locke, when you do invest $5 million, and then we've had a longer time to kind of, pick up the offense now, we're well into two-thirds of the season. But I look at Locke and I'm like, damn, when you do see him, that looks almost like a misread of player to system, in the sense that he wasn't particularly mobile, so you would have to, and also that he does have this kind of gunslinging tendency, kind of winging it tendency that I didn't think was a great fit. So what I'm saying to you, the kind of question is, how are you? I mean, they're going to do it. John Mara is not going to get. I think they're going to go for the fourth year. But as a Giants fan, I worry. How do I trust these guys to draft a quarterback in not a good quarterback year? Well, basically, I got primetime son Cam Ward or bust, pretty much, and these guys have to make the pick. And games having to give multiple picks to get one of those guys.
No, Jim, I got you. Your phone's crapping out a little bit on us here, so I'm going to let you go. Look, when you get to the end of the backup quarterback grouping in free agency, your options become very limited. All right, if you have an X number of dollar budget that you can spend on a quarterback, it limits the options they have available to you. It's like going into a draft and saying, well, you don't have a pick in the first or second round, but I need you to find a quarterback in this draft. That's basically the equivalent of it, right? Where you have X number of dollars to spend, but the best 35 or 40 quarterbacks are not going to sign for that. It's like going into a draft and saying, well, you can't draft a quarterback in the first or second round, but find me that franchise quarterback. That's going to be really hard to do.
And let's not forget, as we saw on Hard Knocks, there was an effort to bring Tyrod Taylor back.
Right.
The Jets just offered him more money.
I think they almost 9, right? Wasn't it something crazy like that?
I think it was 2 for $18
is
what they ended up giving him, which is more than the Giants could afford.
And obviously with incentives and stuff, I'm sure the number was lower. But, so I think you like the way Dable was able to develop DeVito last year and take an underdrafted free agent and make it work. I think that you take solace in. You look at what Brian Dable did in Buffalo as well and how he helped develop Josh Allen. I know, Jim, you called last week. You didn't put a lot of stock into that, but I do think it's fair to do that. So, look, you hired a guy because he's been in this league a long time. And going back to college when he had, Tua and Jalen Hurts and those guys in college, Brian Dable. He was around those guys at Alabama, where he's been around young quarterbacks and he's figured out a way to make it work with very different young quarterbacks too, right? Whether it's Tua or Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, go down the list. So I think you should have confidence that wherever they decide to go with quarterback next year, and you're right, it's fraught with danger to go into a draft saying, I have to draft a quarterback no matter what. That's how you mess up, right? You don't draft a guy unless you think he should be drafted there and he's a really good player. You can't just say, I have to draft somebody at this position no matter what. That's how you make mistakes. So I don't think that's how Joe Schoen's going to operate, to be honest with you. I know a lot of fans think that's how Joe Schoen's going to operate. I think he's too smart of a person to operate that way because there's a chance they only love one quarterback in this class and they might not have a chance to pick him because maybe the Raiders are picking first, right? And they're picking the quarterback and they're not trading that pick no matter what. The same way it was with Washington and New England in this year's draft, like we saw on Hard Knocks, right? So you can't go into a class thinking that way. So I think you aren't going to know in March if you're even going to have access to that guy unless you know for sure who's picking who in front of you. So I think going into free agency, Matt, I think you have to find a veteran that you would trust to start. Again, this is assuming Daniel's not back. That is not written in stone yet, but we're in the theoretical world that Jim's playing in. That's the world we'll play in too. I think when you hit the free agents, you have to make sure you sign a guy. If Tommy DeVito doesn't prove to be that guy at the end of this year, that you feel comfortable starting week 1 and perhaps starting 17 games next year because you might not know who's even going to be available to you in the draft at quarterback depending on when you're selecting. The Giants could pick 8th or 9th this year. That's possible. Last year, 4 quarterbacks were gone by then. Who knows? It's going to be a very, very tough situation to navigate, depending on where the Giants are picking.
Yeah, I want to touch on the draft aspect that you just briefly touched on.
Sure.
I fully agree with you. I do not understand why there are a lot of people out there that seem to think that Joe Schoen is just going to force a quarterback pick just to do it. because he had the opportunity to do that exact thing in this year's draft. There were 3 quarterbacks gone, which, again, also you talk about, his ability to evaluate quarterbacks. Well, first of all, we've all seen the now viral clip of Brian Dable saying, trade whatever to try to move up to get Jaden Daniels, which the Commanders just were not moving from that pick, so that was never going to happen. But Jaden Daniels looks pretty good so far. And we also all know all the reports about trying to move up with the Patriots for Drake May. He also looks good. So they were targeting those 2 guys.
And that wasn't just reports. We saw Joe Shane on the phone talking to Elliot Wolf.
Yeah. So those are the 2 guys that they were really targeting, both of whom have shown a lot of promise as rookies. So that is one reason to feel positive. Second, I don't think that he's just going to force a quarterback pick because, as John mentioned, there were 3 other quarterbacks taken after the Giants pick. The Giants had the chance to take any of them. They did not feel that any of those 3 were either good enough to be this number 6 pick or a good enough fit, at least in this Giants and Brian Dable's offense. So they did not force the quarterback pick, despite all of the buzz about J.J. McCarthy, despite all of the reports saying that, that the Giants were going to take a quarterback no matter what, just to, potentially help the front office's job security. Like, that did not happen. So I don't see why people seem to think that it's definitely going to happen this year. I think if Joe Shane and Brian Dable, the whole front office, coaching staff, if they think that there is a guy out there that can be the franchise quarterback of this team for the next decade plus, whether it's staying pat and taking him with whatever pick they end up at or moving up to get that guy, Joe Shane has already shown that he is not afraid to do that, whatever it takes to get the guy. And I think that is what's going to happen this April in the draft if the Giants fall in love with the quarterback. We don't know if they will or not, because right now on November 19th, there seem to be 2 quarterbacks that are widely considered to be, top of the draft picks, which is Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. We don't know if the Giants will have an opportunity to get either of those guys, even if they attempt to trade up, because the Giants currently have the 4th pick. The Cowboys lost last night, moved the Giants up to pick number 4. We don't know how many more games the Giants are going to win. We don't know how many more games the other teams around the Giants are going to win, and what those other teams plan on doing with their quarterbacks. I mean, the Jaguars have the number 1 pick right now. They just signed Trevor Lawrence to a massive, massive extension before the season. He's not going anywhere.
They have 1 win or 2 wins, though?
They have 2 wins.
They have 2 wins.
Everyone's got
That's right.
2
No
wins at
one
the
has
top
less
of the
than 2.
draft.
That's right. We talked about that
And,
last week. That's right.
there's the Cleveland Browns, which that is the biggest quarterback situation to keep an eye on this offseason, because no one knows what they're going to do, because they still owe so much guaranteed money to Deshaun Watson.
Yeah,
and that's one of the teams ahead of the Giants right now. So who's to say?
Raiders, too, by the way. That's another team that you don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah, so we don't know who the teams around the Giants are going to take, what's going to happen, what these evaluations on these quarterbacks are going to be. But I personally feel a lot of confidence that between the front office and the coaching staff, they will be able to identify if there is a quarterback in the draft that they think could be a great fit for Brian Dable's offense and help get this team back to where everybody wants it to be. Like, again, he had a chance, Joe Shane, to take J.J. McCarthy or Michael Penix or Bo Nix, and he didn't. And before anyone calls and talks about, oh, well, they passed on Bo Nix. Bo Nix landing with Sean Payton in Denver, just about every draft analyst said that was the most perfect fit of like any player to any team in the draft.
And I'm still not fully sold on that yet either, by the way.
Yeah.
The Falcons have one of the worst defenses in football. Let's not get over our skis.
Bo Nix has looked, even beyond just last week, he's looked good in recent weeks. There's no doubt about it.
He's looked solid. I agree.
He's looked solid. But again, he was the perfect fit to go into Sean Payton's offense and run the type of offense that Sean Payton wanted. If you threw, let's say, Michael Penix into that offense, probably would not get even close to the same results that Bo Nix has been getting lately. So I don't understand the narrative that Joe Shane is just going to force a quarterback pick to, quote unquote, buy himself some time, when he literally did not do that this past year, when a lot of people were saying, oh, this is people outside this building, to be clear, were saying, oh, it's a big year. Like, Joe Shane needs to show, why he should continue to be the GM. He didn't do the move that a quote-unquote like desperate GM would do to buy himself time.
Little different when you already have Daniel Jones in the building, though. There isn't as much urgency to necessarily add somebody.
But the Giants made efforts to move up for Jaden Daniels or Drake May. So clearly a quarterback in the draft was in play.
To your point, yes, they did not reach for a quarterback they did not have graded appropriately. And look, I get why people would think that, and no one understands the importance more than I do of making sure you have a young developmental quarterback in your building, in your pipeline, if you don't have your long-term starter here. It is vitally important. But maybe then if you don't believe one of these guys is first-round worthy, maybe you pick a developmental guy in day 2, right? And you bring in a veteran and you develop that way. And if that doesn't work after 1 year, all right, then you're back to trying to find a quarterback the next year in the first round. But investing that type of high premium pick in a player that you don't feel in your heart of hearts has a real good chance of succeeding, that's how you lose your job.
Yeah.
That's how you lose your job.
And one other point real quick before you go back to calls I want to touch on that Jim brought up is he said that he doesn't feel like this team is like, you just throw a good quarterback in and they're ready to compete and contend.
Contend, no, but I think that you can have success.
I agree with you 100%. I think this year has shown that there are a lot of young, very young pieces on this team that are part of the future and part of the core future of this franchise that have shown a ton of potential.
Like, do we think the situation around Jaden Daniels is that much better than the situation around the Giants quarterback?
No, I don't. I think the Giants next year, on the offensive line alone, I think the Giants have a better offensive line. Though, assuming Thomas comes back healthy.
Yeah, though the Commanders' offensive line has played really well this year. But
no doubt about it. But the pieces that the Giants have, which right now I think 4 of the 5 Week 1 starters are supposed to be back next year, with Greg Van Roden being the one exception, which who knows if he will be back. Like, regardless.
The way he played, I wouldn't mind him having him back, to be honest with you.
But regardless, the offensive line prior to Andrew Thomas going down looked like it took a big step from last year.
Yeah.
Big step. You have offensive playmakers now between Malik Neighbors, Tyrone Tracy, Theo Johnson, Wan'Dale Robinson. Some talented playmakers on offense. And then on defense, we know that there are some very talented players on each level of the Giants' defense. And on top of all of that, the Giants have 7 draft picks this year, which the way it's going, those are going to be likely high draft picks in each round, and a lot of cap space to work with. Assuming let's just assume hypothetically that Daniel Jones is not back and he's cut, and that clears another $20 million in cap space. Joe Shea in the front office will have a lot of cap space to work with to continue to fill out the rest of the roster. So I just don't necessarily agree with Jim in that if you put drop a new quarterback into this situation next year, that things can't get a lot better, because we've seen it with teams across the league. Obviously, you would want the record this year to be better than 2-8, but still, there are talented pieces here, and I strongly believe if you put a quarterback that fits into this system next year, again, whether that's a rookie or a veteran bridge quarterback, whatever the situation is, this team could have a lot more success.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think you're vaulting to contender status, but I think you can be a successful
team. Rebuilding, going from what the Giants have had the last decade into being the perennial contender that Joe Shane has talked about wanting to build, takes time. And I know we all would have hoped, and in an ideal world, we'd be there already, but sometimes it takes franchises a little bit longer than others to get there. And I think putting potentially a new quarterback in, dropping them into this situation next year, again, while adding more talent with the cap space that the Giants will have, could help elevate the Giants to the next step in the rebuild next year. And I agree with you. I don't expect them to be Super Bowl favorites next year, but you can take a step in the right direction, which at this point is what everyone should be hoping for.
Yeah, I don't think it's a situation where you pluck the cord. This isn't like putting Drake May in New England this year. The situation's better than, say, what Drake May is in New England, for example. All right, let's go to James in California. He's up next. Hey, James.
Hey, guys. Just piggybacking off this draft stuff, let's, quarterback draft stuff. Let's just say, hypothetically, that the Giants do draft a quarterback, this draft or next draft. I'm starting to think that it's just straight up luck. Like there's no skill involved in the thing.
I wouldn't say straight up luck, James, but evaluating quarterbacks is extremely difficult, and it does require some good fortune along the way. There's no question about it.
Because even, and I think that's a good point, John, but even like if you go back historically, and I'm actually just piggybacking off, that Giants huddle that you guys did with Chris Bignano and saying the stuff about Trevor Lawrence, right? Like how do you figure out Trevor Lawrence? Right, he's the unanimous number one pick. Okay, if there's anybody in the last 10 years, he's the guy. Right?
Him or Burrow, I would say.
Yeah, and then so even Burrow, right? So, John, I think I remember from a couple of years ago when he was coming out in the draft. It's like because didn't he only play one? Didn't he really only start 1 year at LSU?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, so now you're dealing with that. You're like, okay, the guy plays 1 year, or you go to like C.J. Stroud. Okay, no good Ohio State quarterbacks, really.
Well,
right?
James, even Jaden Daniels before last year was a day 3 draft pick.
Yeah, and Schmeelk, the thing about even Jaden Daniels, and look, this may be unfair, and this may be like, I don't know, reading between the lines, but even the Hard Knocks episode with Jaden Daniels, right? Now, in my opinion, when you had Jaden Daniels coming into the office, like to me, he didn't seem alpha. He didn't seem like the intangible guys with all the leadership. Like if you put him up with the other guys that came in like that day or on the show, right? If you put him up with Roma Dunze, right, or JJ, or specifically Drake May, right? When those guys were at the board, like I was like, wow, like those 3 guys are super impressive. Right, and you can kind of see, like, okay, if you're talking about leadership or intangibles or, you want to face the franchise guy, yes.
Now, James, what I would tell you is I think it's hard for me to take too much out of, like, an edited documentary in terms of what the quarterbacks show at the board. I understand what you're saying, and that's your impression. That's great. In terms of evaluating quarterbacks, I would tell you to go back, and I got to find when we aired it last year. But I think it was sometime in early April or late March. I did a Giants huddle with Kurt Warner, who was at that point evaluating all the college quarterbacks. And this is a guy, he watches all the tape. He's a former league MVP. He's a Hall of Famer. He knows the quarterback position better than anyone. And he flat out said to me, he goes, John, like, there are things I watch tape on these guys. I don't know how good these guys are going to be. And I'm a guy that knows exactly what they're seeing, what they should be doing, but without knowing how they're being coached and without knowing things that are impossible to know, evaluating these guys and really coming up with a firm ranking on how good they're going to be at the pro level given what he's seen them do in college, to him was almost impossible. And that's Kurt Warner. So what the hell chance do we have? To be honest.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And this is like a little bit of a big leap, but it's almost like you got to do the old school, Ron Wolf, GM of the Packers philosophy, where you literally got to draft one every year.
Well, yeah, that's the theory. That it's so hard to do and find the guy. You just keep throwing guys at the problem until you find the one that fits. And there is something to that now. Like, there is something to that.
Look at the Niners.
Yeah, the Niners, right? They trade all this stuff up to go get Trey Lance. He flops. And everyone's like, oh, man, Kyle Shanahan, they don't know how to evaluate quarterbacks there. It's terrible. Then they find Brock Purdy in the 7th round, a guy, by the way, they passed on. And people, I always make sure I bring this up as it drives me nuts. Oh, they were so smart. They found Brock Purdy in the 7th round. Well, why'd they pass on him in the 5th and 6th round then? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like the Dallas Cowboys, oh, they found Dak Prescott in the 4th round. Great job by the Cowboys. They tried to draft Connor Cook from Michigan State. He got picked right before them. They tried to trade up for Paxton Lynch the year before.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, really hard. It's really, really hard to find quarterbacks.
The Arizona Cardinals, let's not forget, they found Kyler Murray. They picked him number 1 overall, but 1 year after, they spent a top 10 pick on Josh Rosen.
Great point.
And they, moved on from him after 1 season and now have their franchise quarterback. And it's paying off. They're in first place in the NFC West.
Yeah, and even this is like the biggest example, right? But like even Mahomes, right? And Andy Reid is, the brilliant offensive mind. Even Mahomes goes 10th, and you're telling me, I don't know. Does Andy Reid even really know that Mahomes is going to be good? I don't know.
I mean,
they traded up.
They
a
traded
good
up for
amount
him. Now,
so he probably had a good idea.
The better argument is not that does Andy Reid not know. The better argument is that, well, if it was so easy, how come one of the teams that picked 1 through 9 didn't take him?
Yep. Or the only guy who had conviction about Josh Allen was Paul Dottino. He was the only guy who knew Josh Allen was going to be awesome.
Well, look, I think we all knew Josh Allen had the physical ability to become awesome, but and James, appreciate the call, man. But he had a lot of issues coming out with his accuracy. I mean, he can hit the broadside of a barn half the time. The ball was all over the place. And by the way, the first 2 years in the league, he still had that problem. It took till year 3 for it to really come together. And again, this is not me taking a shot at Paul. Paul's also the guy that said Davis Webb's going to be the next franchise quarterback for the Giants. No, it just shows you how hard it is. Somebody can be so right about one thing and one guy, then be so wrong about the next guy. Same thing with me. Same thing with you. We're going to be right about some guys and wrong about other guys. In quarterback, it's even more difficult. The beauty is often in the eye of the beholder. There are things I think that every individual evaluator get drawn to, traits that are most important to them, and that might shield other issues, right? That maybe you're not that you don't see as clearly. So, look, I think James's overall point is correct. That it's a really, really hard thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, look at the 2018 draft in particular. Baker Mayfield goes first overall, which before last year, everyone would have considered him a humongous bust.
Took his 4th team for him to figure it out.
Yeah. Then Sam Darnold was the next quarterback taken at 3, which again, prior to this season, everyone would have said colossal bust.
Took his 4th team to figure it out.
Then you go down, Josh Allen at number 7, who the Bills traded up for. But if you remember, the Bills, by a lot of people, were getting ripped for trading up and taking him at number 7 overall. There are videos, I think I saw this yesterday, of Bills fans freaking out about the pick.
That's funny.
Because everyone was like, who the heck is this guy? We don't want him. There are other quarterbacks taken. And then Josh Rosen was the next quarterback taken, 10th overall. And then you have to go all the way down to the last pick of the first round where the Baltimore Ravens traded back into the end of the first round in order to take Lamar Jackson. So every team had a chance to take Lamar Jackson, including the Ravens the first time. And instead the Ravens took Hayden Hurst, the tight end.
Because clearly they knew Lamar Jackson was going to be great. That's why they selected Hayden Hurst before they selected him.
Yeah. So, I mean, that draft in particular, I feel like, is just a perfect example of how difficult it is to get the quarterback right in the draft. You could have the number 1 overall pick. That doesn't mean that the quarterback you take there is going to guarantee to be a stud.
Hey, you go back historically, a lot of times it's not the first quarterback taken that's the best one in these classes. It's not. Now, sometimes it is, like the Matthew Stafford year or the Joe Burrow year, that works out that way. Other years it doesn't work out that way. Kyler Murray's another one. Who else was drafted in Murray's year? I'm trying to think. That was Daniel Jones' year, right? Yeah. So it's not always that simple. I wish I could tell you there's a science to this, folks, and you can go through it. You know, I had Stephen Ruiz on from The Ringer last year, too, and we had this conversation. He does all their quarterback rankings and stuff like that. And, you know, he goes, look, John, I'll be honest with you. Like, when I evaluate these college quarterbacks, I've given up trying to figure out processing and how they see the field because I can't tell. Like, pick traits and hope you coach the guy up well enough where the traits eventually develop into something like a Josh Allen, right? That's the theory behind drafting Anthony Richardson, who had so little experience as a passer. He just didn't play that much in college. Draft the guy with the traits. Hope you have a good enough coaching staff and infrastructure to develop that guy with those traits, and that's one path to do it. And there's no surefire way. Otherwise, it'd be not a lot of teams with poor quarterback situations for like 30 years, like the Washington Commanders had, or the Lions before they found Stafford, right? I mean, just go through the list. The Bucks were trying to find a quarterback until Tom Brady went there forever, right? It's just really, really tough to do.
Yeah, but I will say just one reason Giants fans to, have confidence that Joe Schoen and this front office can identify that guy. This front office, I mean, granted, this is front offices around the NFL, but the Giants front office in particular has spent so much time already this college football season scouting all of these guys. I mean, we see reports almost every single week of Joe Schoen at, college X watching whatever two teams play with their top prospects. I mean, the reports out there that, there have been various front office members that have spent time at Colorado games.
Oh, yeah, Brandon Brown, Joe Shane, and Dennis Hickey are at college games every single Saturday, and then they fly out to wherever the Giants are playing on Sunday or fly back to be at the Giants games. But every Saturday they're on location somewhere. And sometimes if they can combine it, they'll do like a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, like 3-day trip and knock out a few teams in a row. So
so they are doing a ton of extensive work on all of these prospects, and especially, given this Giants situation right now, especially the top quarterbacks. They are doing so much work, and this goes back all the way back to basically just after the end of this year's draft. That's when the scouting starts for the 2025 draft, is right when the 2024 draft is complete. They already get started on their scouting for next year's draft. And not only that, but, the last caller brought up Jaden Daniels at the board, what we saw on Hard Knocks. Like, I have confidence that Brian Daboll is able to sort of tell, A, from the tape, and then B, after spending time with a guy, seeing how he, how quick his response and reactions are. I feel like that Brian Daboll can be able to tell, like, okay, this guy can handle at least like the mental aspect of the NFL, which is a huge hurdle for college quarterbacks to get over in order to go from being a successful college quarterback to a successful NFL quarterback.
That's your best chance of figuring that out. And that's what Kurt Warner said. Look, unless I meet with these guys and I find out how they're being coached and what they're being told to see, then I'll have a better idea of knowing how they're processing things. But just from watching tape and stuff, the way they do it, it's really, really tough. All right, Len in Columbia, Maryland, he's up next. Hi, Len.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
We're good.
Good.
All right, 7 to go. I got my third survey this calendar year from the organization. They want to know about the experience at the stadium.
And I could tell you, Len, they are working very hard to try to make that experience as good as it possibly can, which is why they're sending these surveys out.
Yeah. And let me tell you 4 things I tell them real quick, and then I want to talk to Matt, John.
Do you want me to forward I can forward you up to the stadium presentation, guys, if you want, Len. I can get you some good one-on-one time with some people upstairs if you want.
I have asked for that in responding to the surveys. Yeah, the fourth thing I tell them is, look, everything's going good. Seriously, I mean, it's a football stadium. Sometimes it gets cold, sometimes it rains, but basically they're doing pretty good with what they got. I don't have any criticism. Guest services, parking services. I mean, they're doing pretty good. I tell them that.
All right, I like that.
Number 3 that I tell them, don't dare you raise prices again. It's been 2 years in a row. The product is not very good. Don't raise prices again.
Okay, fair enough.
Please.
Fair enough.
The second thing I tell them is get rid of the in-stadium pregame DJ. I'm showing my age. Get off my lawn type thing, but it's terrible. And number 1, I tell them, and I try to fit this in more than one place.
Not your type of music, Len. Not surprising. No.
Yeah, okay. All right.
No. Okay, gotcha. Okay, what's number 1?
Number 1, just win.
That's it.
Look, we got 7 games left. There's no reason why we shouldn't win. Stay at home. You got to send your best customers down those escalators at the end of the day in a good mood.
And Len, I know this probably doesn't mean much to you, but I can just tell you that is literally probably the most important thing to the Mara family.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. No, everything's better if you win. I got a long ride home. It's miserable after a loss. I mean miserable.
Except when you're listening to the Giants postgame show on WFN in New York.
There you go. There you go. And I get that. I get that down to about exit 5, and then it dies out, John. I get it down to about exit 5.
Remember, the AM signal will travel longer than the FM signal will.
Yes, for sure. Matt, a quick comment so I can get on to one more point after that.
Yep.
The Giants are a year away from being a year away. Your comment, please.
A year away from what?
hear me, Matt?
You said a year away from being a year away?
This team is a year away from being a year away.
Yeah, but from what, though? I don't think Matt can answer that question. And you mean from, like, contending for a Super Bowl, contending for a playoff spot?
No. It starts with the playoffs. Contending for a playoff.
Got it.
I thought that was understood, but okay, I get it. Yeah, Matt, what do you think?
For a playoff spot, I mean, I would say, I guess, to try to be as realistic as possible, given how last year and this year went.
Okay.
That is, I guess that's fair to be considered like a true playoff contender, but at the same time, if you drop, depending on who the quarterback is, if you were to drop a quarterback in next year, I can't say I'd be shocked if they, made a run at towards the playoffs.
And we have seen teams, Len, like how many games did the Cardinals win last year?
Well, not very many.
And how many did the Commanders win last year? So there are teams that can make big jumps.
Look at Houston. They went from the second worst team in the league to winning a playoff game last year.
Now, all three of those teams had a big-time quarterback.
Of course.
It's kind of interesting in the Commanders' approach. I don't want to get off my point, but let me say something.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Since you brought it up, let me say something about the Commanders. They were, what 4-13 last year?
Yes.
That sound about right?
Sure.
4-13. Who signs, when you're 4-13, who in the world signs a Zach Ertz, a Bobby Wagner, a Dorrance Armstrong, that Louvo guy? Would we ever do that, John?
Well,
would we ever go get veteran leadership coming off a 4-13 record?
Well,
if you have a whole new regime coming in,
Uh-huh.
I understand, and you're really, and it's new ownership group too, right? New general manager, like everything is new. I could see you trying to set a culture where you do bring in those types of guys. The problem is that all those types of guys, especially the Bobby Wagners of the world, they're only going to be there for a couple of years. The Zach Ertz of the world, they only have a couple years left, so you're going to have to replace them eventually. But I think Dan Quinn brought those guys in specifically to install his program.
I was going to say, the four guys that you mentioned, other than Frankie Louvu, the other three had all been with either Dan Quinn in Seattle and Dallas or Cliff Kingsbury in Arizona. So they were veterans that bring in to help, I think, mentor and show the young players this is how we run this system.
Okay. Well, we can talk about veteran leadership on the Giants at a different time.
Sure.
Matt, second question second point with Matt. One of the things the Giants are going to be doing, and I think you've already started to do it because you alluded to this earlier in the show, and I have begun to. I'm trying to figure out. Of the 80 guys, I think we've got 80 guys under some form of contract at this point. Practice squad, injured reserve. I think there's about 80 guys, approximately. And so we're looking at those 80 guys. Who can you win with, right? I mean, that's the question. We've got to figure out who can take us forward through the next couple of years, okay? I got a list. I'm not going to give you the names. Maybe we'll do that when the season's over. And maybe you've done the same thing, Matt. I could only come up with 17 names that I want back on this team. If somebody wants any of the other 7 and 10 players, 6 and 11 players, 40 to 53 type players, go ahead, put them on the team, and we'll be 6 and 11 again next year, and probably the year after that.
Well, the only thing
we got to get some talent.
No, for sure. Matt, but real quick, Len, you just said 17 players. There are 22 starters between the offense and defense. So if you're telling me that you are very happy with 17 of the starters already, and the Giants have a full allotment of draft picks and a ton of cap space to work with, that tells me that it's not that far away. You're missing 5 starters from having a full starting lineup of offensive and defensive players that you think the Giants could win with.
Okay, let me. Good point. I don't agree with you, but it's a very good point. Let me tell you. None of those 17 are quarterbacks.
Of course.
Okay.
And that's the most important position.
I want very much to write Evan Neal's name on that list, but not yet. I got to watch the next 7 weeks.
No, he's not there yet. I agree with that. That's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair.
Okay.
That's fair.
All right. And John, just to go back to a previous conversation that we've had. I put his name there but I wrote it in pencil, and the pencil has a big eraser.
You
on
put
it.
who there? I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Pinnock.
Oh, Pinnock. Okay, I got you.
You know, we've
Yeah.
talked about Pinnock before. You and I have different opinions.
I'm surprised he made the 17, Len. Congratulations. Welcome to the team.
Matt, two of the 17 who I think we can win with can carry us forward positively. I'm a little worried about it. I mean, Slayton's not under contract. I like Darius Slayton. I want him on this team.
I like
want him
Slayton
on
too,
this
Len.
team.
The drops drive me nuts. I'm not going to lie to you.
Yeah. Okay, all right. But we got to watch the money. I mean, his contract's up, so that's one. And the other is Singletary. You know, he's RB2 now. And we're going to pay him too much money to be RB2 next year. So I don't know what we do with that. But I like the combination. I like Tracy Singletary. It's just the salary thing is way out of whack. I mean, it's just way out of whack. See, I don't think many. You know, we may have 8 draft choices, but come on, it's the top 3 that really count. These are the guys that are going to make a difference on Sunday. It's your top 3 picks.
Sure.
And maybe we got some money and we can go out and get 3 or 4 free agents. So we're in the 20s now. My thinking is it still puts us, a year away from being a year away. I mean, we're in a kind of a rebuild here, particularly when you don't have a quarterback.
All right, Len, we got to roll, man. Appreciate it, my friend.
Thanks, Len.
Thank you very much. And by the way, folks, and this is going to start now, and I get it. I'm not telling you not to call and talk about it because 2-8 is 2-8. I understand. But if you want a lot of draft talk, draft season, go check it out. We just finished recording just before we went live today. Me and Tony Pauline had Dane Brugler on. We went through his top 50 with us. Long up, we went like 45 minutes with Dane, then we did 15 minutes ourselves. So it's almost like an hour episode. So there's a lot in there. I think we're taking next week off with Thanksgiving. Pearson wants to spend time with his family.
The nerve.
I know, right? It's very, very selfish. But we probably are not going to have a draft season next week. But then we'll go every week the rest of the way, folks. So the episode with Dane is great. That's going to go up at some point tomorrow, probably tomorrow afternoon or so. So go check that out. Really good talk about the draft class in general. I have a feeling Giant fans aren't going to be very happy after what Dane says about much of the draft class, but that's okay. I'll give you one tease. I went through the quarterbacks. I asked position-wise. If you just take last year's draft class and combine it with this year's, what would you get? He goes, well, of the top 9 picks, 7 will be from last year and 2 would be from this year. It would be Travis Hunter and then I think it was Travis Hunter. So maybe 1 out of the first 9 would be from this year.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't shock me considering how strong this year's draft
it doesn't,
was. I mean,
they both compared. You want to laugh? Dane and Tony both compared.
Sorry, before the first 9 picks with the 2 classes combined.
Okay, one would be from this year.
I was going to say, there's no way like
year.
Michael Penix would be in the top, 9.
Well, no, I mean, he not necessarily. He just said of his top graded players from last year. He didn't have Penix that high, but of his top graded players, I think he said like of the first 9, 8 would be from last year. It would be the 3 wide receivers, Bowers, Alt,
first
and
3 quarterbacks.
3 quarterbacks.
I mean.
And then it would be Hunter.
That makes a ton of sense. Those guys all
they're pretty awesome.
Could be great.
Yeah, 100%. And then Hunter would be the 9th guy in that group. And he says that would be for him Hunter as a corner. He says Hunter is a wide receiver. He would not even be his wide receiver 1 in the class. If he said all I want to do is play wide receiver, he wouldn't necessarily have him as. He didn't say it, but he indicated that he might not be his wide receiver 1. If
I
he
could
just
see
played
Hunter being a lockdown cornerback, and then if he really is serious about trying to play
third
both,
down receiver,
have like a package of plays or situational where he also goes in at wide receiver.
Yeah, I would say
it's going to be tough for him to be full time.
No, he couldn't be.
I don't think.
I would say third downs and then your 2-minute drills and those type of situations where you really need it, right?
Yeah.
So that was one note, but those are the types of things we talk about when it comes to the draft class. So go check that out on Draft Season. Draft Season still is its own podcast feed, but it also pops up on what once was the Giants Huddle feed and is now the Giants Podcast Network feed. So check that out. And one of the callers referenced it already too. My interview with Chris Bizignano, I guess that's up, Pearson, essentially, considering somebody heard it. I guess it has to be. That's the most recent Giants Huddle podcast. Go check that out as well. Anything on the website that people should be checking out, Matt?
Well, all the huddles, the videos are up on the website in case you want a video version of these.
Well, who don't want to look at this guy?
We have
everybody is the answer. The answer is everybody.
We have not yet started this week's game preview articles. That will pretty much start tomorrow, but we had some good bye week content last week.
Yep.
I had a rookie progress report.
The rookie report. You're good at that.
Dan Salamone had an article or two, so There's Fact or Fiction, a cover 3, kind of summing up the first half of the season, looking into the second half. So yeah, keep on the lookout. For the rest of this week, there'll be plenty of preview content leading up to Sunday's game. One last note I just want to mention, just about the Giants cap situation. Going into this offseason, right now they are projected to have just over $45 million.
That's not including any savings.
That's
from
not
Daniel
including
Jones.
any potential cuts of guys that are actively or currently on the roster. And that is, I don't know what projected salary cap Spot Track is using, but as we saw this year, the actual salary cap ended up being $10 million higher than what it was being projected.
Do you know where that ranks among NFL teams by any chance?
It says right now 17th most cap space.
17th, that's it, huh? But I guess if you get the extra 20 from, if you get the extra 20 in, that would probably
Add an
pop
extra
it into
20,
the top
and
5.
you also have to keep in mind that unlike, in the previous couple of seasons, or I guess I'm thinking mostly of the 2023 offseason, the Giants don't have any like big contracts of guys they're trying to retain. Like no one currently on the team that's about to be a free agent is going to sign a massive deal like we saw with Dexter Lawrence or Andrew Thomas.
Joe Shane said only 2 starters right now.
I think
that
it's
are
Darius
unsigned
and Jason Pinnock.
Correct.
And while those guys could
and
be
Van
back,
Roten, so those are 3.
All 3 of those guys could be back, but realistically, they're not signing for massive deals. So.
And tomorrow, by the way, it is O'Hara and Mantle, and they'll continue to take your calls on the quarterback stuff. I did a full bye week, self-scout, the same way I scouted the opponents. I scouted the Giants at the bye week, so maybe I'll do that with Matt on Thursday, and then Matt and Paul can do our usual game preview with the Bucs on Friday to give us something a little bit different to talk about. So that's the plan for the rest of the week. Thanks for being with us. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday or Tuesday. What is today? Tuesday. Sure. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday and Wednesday. We'll see you then.